It's a beautiful day here in Winona, Minnesota, and I'm so glad that you all came together to experience this incredible event. My name is Rob Thomas. If we hadn't had the chance to meet, I am currently the development director at History Theater in St. Paul. But I had the pleasure and honor of working for the Great River Shakespeare Festival for 4 seasons and actually living in Winona for a couple years. A few more years ago than I want to admit. And it really was one of the greatest experiences of my life and my career, being here in Winona, working in the arts community, and getting to be a part of all of these incredible community events and meeting some of these really, really wonderful people. So it really, truly is an honor that Heidi asked me to come and get this thing started, really, because that's all I'm really doing is getting this thing going. I'm supposed to stay on script, but I have to say I was in my office yesterday and talking to Fry. I said, I'm heading up to Winona tonight for the sonnet contest. And they said, what else are you going to do? And I started mentioning all of the things that I want to do that I will not have time to do. I have tickets to the Shakespeare Festival tonight. I would love to get to the Minnesota Marine Art Museum. I would love to head to that great little bookstore downtown. I would love to walk around downtown. There's some sort of a walking history tour this afternoon, right? I would love to do that, but I'm going to run out of time. And somebody said, there's that much going on in Winona, Minnesota. I said, there is way more than that going on in Winona, Minnesota. And I think this is a great example of just one of the many, many incredible, incredible offerings that Winona has. So welcome to the 2024 Celebrate the Sonnet event. This is the official end of the annual Maria W. Faust Sonnet Contest. Now, today we're going to recognize the winners of the 2024 contest and listen as they read their sonnets. So 12 out of our 28 winners, the actual writers of the sonnet, the winners themselves, will read their sonnets over Zoom. We also have Doug Scholz-Carlson here, director of the Great River Shakespeare Festival, artistic director. And the rest of our judges, who we'll introduce in just a moment here, will read the remaining sonnets for the winners that aren't able to join us today. So we get to hear them read the sonnets they wrote. And then for those that can't join, we bring in ringers, just total pros to come up and read these sonnets for you. I'm looking at you, Ken. We started as a local contest sponsored by Winona's first poet laureate and the Great River Shakespeare Festival. And now the Maria W. Faust Sonnet Contest has grown into an international phenomenon with a reach far beyond just the community. The 2024 contest received entries from 10 countries and 40 states. Almost 650 sonnets were submitted by 180 individuals, including 68 in the youth category. Prizes totaling $3,200 were awarded in the following categories. There were 4 in the top 4 regional, 4 in the youth category, and 16 in the laureate's choice. The Maria W. Faust Sonnet Contest is an annual event that welcomes entries from around the world to Winona. The contest honors the memory of Maria W. Faust, a Winona State University graduate in communications, a 20-year resident of Winona, an avid supporter of varied local arts, and a lover of poetry. This year's contest is bittersweet, as it is the first without Maria's husband, Ted Howland, who passed away in February. Ted endowed the contest to continue into the future with the goal of keeping Maria's love of poetry alive in our community and beyond. And I'd just like to do just a little moment of silence for Ted. And as we reflect on that incredible generosity of thinking about the future of this contest and ensuring that poetry remains a vital part of arts programming here in Winona. Just a moment. Thank you. And now let's give him a round of applause, because we don't want to be quiet. We also want to be joyous about what he has done for the community. We have other thanks to give. As I mentioned your name, if you don't mind giving a little wave so people know who you are, they'll know who you are because you're coming up to read. But we want to double check. The contest judges, Winona's Poet Laureate, James Armstrong, Ken McCullough, Amelia DeGrazia, and Leslie Schultz of Northfield, Minnesota. We also have to thank the people who really get this event organized and going. We have Heidi Bryant, who is the managing director. Heidi, give a little wave. And Johanna Ruprecht, who's in the back, ensuring everything technology-wise is going smooth. I'm supposed to thank myself, but that's weird. So, we're not going to do that. We'll do that later. We have to thank the Great River Shakespeare Festival, who's a partner of the organization, and representing today, we have artistic director Doug Scholz-Carlson. Big thanks for them. River Arts Alliance, a really robust organization that supports the arts in Winona. They're a fiscal sponsor. Let's give them a big round of applause. We have Mary Farrell here, videographer, photographer extraordinaire, who's videotaping today and is obviously being very humble as per the usual. Thank you, Mary. We have to thank Leanna Jerry and the Winona County History Center, who allow us to do this event every year. Big thanks to them. And if you get a chance, check out the exhibit, The Art of Fine Furniture. I look forward to it every year. Big round of applause for them. The musicians that you heard playing, Heidi Bryant and Dr. Meredith Mim. Big round of applause. Poetry and music go so well together. And then, of course, in the back of the room, Ned Bryant, roadie and moral support. Always got to thank your roadie. Always got to thank the guy who's fixing the gasket on the coffee dispenser, With that, I'm going to invite contest judge Jim Armstrong up here, and Jim's going to give some remarks on Ted Howland.
Thank you, Rob. Oops.
Might have shut off.
Right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks so much. So in February of this year, Ted Howland passed away 2 days after Valentine's Day, which I think is very fitting. He was 84 years old. During his time in Winona, Ted Howland inspired people everywhere he went. He inspired the musicians who shared his love of jazz and admired his willingness to pick up the valve trombone later in life. He inspired the many people who worked with him as a volunteer or committee member in the Great River Shakespeare Festival and the River Arts Alliance and other local organizations. He certainly inspired me when, in his 70s, he enrolled in my undergraduate poetry writing course at Winona State University. I was very inspired by Ted's willingness to work closely with other students in the class, students a half a century younger than he was. And they were inspired by his story, how he had come to writing poetry following the early death of his beloved wife, Maria. They were moved by Ted's willingness to write about his grief, his life, his love for Maria. One got the sense that for Ted, this was both a way of honoring Maria and a way of keeping his love for her alive, but also a way of keeping himself in the world. Here's a poem he wrote in my class. It's called Looking Up. A colored JPEG photo of Maria lies beside me on the floor. It's on the upper level of my house, in my office, which is just a tiny cubbyhole. Her image shows a sweet and comely smile. After all, it is her wedding photo. A date which seems so long ago, and yet like yesterday. Why her picture still lies there, I really cannot say. I mean no disrespect, just love. And every time I shove past the door into my cramped computer space, her lovely face looks up at me as if to say, Ted, please do as I am doing. Just keep looking up. Ted's zeal for writing inspired many in Winona's poetry community. Ted was always to be found in the local coffee shop, following the latest inspiration that had sprung into his mind. Ted wrote every single day. This amounted to nearly 10,000 poems. But his love of poetry went further. He became what Ken McCullough calls Winona's poetry angel. His sponsorship of the Sonnet Contest in Maria's name breathed life into the souls of our local poets, as well as the souls of poets around the country and internationally, Ken says. This is exactly right. Sonneteers from around the world have shared his love of the poetic form and have been touched by the story of how he found his muse. After he passed away this year, many sent their condolences and told us how much Ted and the contest meant to them. One response was even in the form of a sonnet, very fitting, right? This was by Paul Freeman, a British poet living in Mauritania. A sonnet to Ted Holland. The world's a lesser place, now Ted's not here, a poet and a patron of the arts. Because he held the straitened sonnet dear, with verse he filled our minds, our souls, our hearts, mustachioed and bearded like a bard. It took profoundest tragedy to roust his poet, for the passing hit him hard of his beloved spouse, Maria Faust. Enthused like her by meter and by rhyme, some 7,000 sonnets that he wrote are left to us, posterity and time, a contest too, on which we poets dote. A muse, a widowed husband, they've conspired to keep us global sonneteers inspired. A nice tribute, don't you think? Although there is one detail that isn't quite accurate. Here's a strange secret. Ted loved sonnets, but he didn't really like writing them very much. His poetry was usually written in a kind of jazzy free-form style with occasional rhymes. His first love was jazz, and I think he felt a little constrained by the sonnet's Baroque form. That said, Ted was capable of meeting the stricter demands of the sonnet, and he did love sonnets. And here is perhaps one of his best. And this, I will give this as letting Ted have the last word. Leaf Omen. A single citron-colored leaf lies lone upon the path which we so often walked, and not just ambled, but with hand in hand shared plans, while unknown, death beside us stalked. This yellowed leaf, foretelling summer's fate, might seem an evil sign of what's to come, although, if truth be told, it's 1 year late in marking, not announcing, her life's sum. Gold leaf, with all the image you convey, lie undisturbed just where you lately fell, as saffron of soon barren days. I dimly hear the tolling of a nearing knell. I want so much to stay upon this earth, yet we all know what lies across that Stygian firth. Thanks, Ted. Now I'd like to bring up Doug Scholz-Carlson.
Good morning, everyone. I love this day. I always love when we get to hear all of these sonnets, and it's been so much fun over so many years to hear them. And the thing I have to say that I really love about sonnets is that they're kind of the perfect length to give you just a tiny little glimpse into somebody else's life, but a very specific moment in someone else's life. And there's just enough there to sort of reveal something about their life and something unexpected so that you actually understand what you're seeing. And then you really realize you're just seeing this tiny little glimpse. And then also that sonnets, they have this built-in tradition. So a lot of them have it, is that there's going to be a turn somewhere in it. So very many people who, when they're writing sonnets, something changes. So even in that tiny little glimpse of someone else's life, you see it. And then something is always changing, like something is always in motion. When this contest started, it was very much a local contest. It is thrilling to see, it is, I don't have much to add about Ted other than it's really bittersweet to be here without him, but his vision and the vision of our poet laureates from Winona to see that the contest could be something more, that it could be, if we're going to look into people's lives, if we're going to get these little visions, now we're getting, from people across the world, we get these visions, and it's a real gift to us. Yeah. The one other person that I really want to thank, because this kind of thing, like a sonnet contest like this, it's fun when we get here on the day and it all seems very simple, but it takes a million little things, some of which are not fun to do, some of which are just organizational, all the way along. And it takes that, there's a real vision to that and a real work to that to keep something like this alive and keep it moving. So for Heidi, thank you for keeping this going. All right, and I get the first two sonnets. And I've been given two love sonnets, which is great. First one is one of our top four. This is by Sally David Weinstock from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and is titled Saint Valentine's. On this day, foolish lovers like to say that someone else decides the one we choose. Careless cherub whose hard runaway bolts knock like tin the hollow hearts we lose to power not our own. Or it's his aim to purposely deceive, to fell the self, mock and weaken it, our life his game, doubling our joy to tear the soul in half. There is no God who makes us love for sport, whose shafts are irony, whose eyes are blind. Love's arm is ours, our mark precisely hurt, a patient figure whom the skillful mind knows finally through missing when its art stuns the moving target of the heart. And the second sonnet that I have, this is one of our regional winners, and this is by Scott Lowry of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, entitled Durability. Somewhere on the cold Dakota plains, my tiny grandma Kate taught one-room school from sturdy books of lessons thought to lull rambunctious farm boys in their growing pains. Grandpa Hugo must have learned which trains could bend his salesman's route enough her way for Saturday luncheon dates. Main Street Cafe, fresh city flowers, his smiling face. He'd strain to hear her cultured sing-song voice above clatter of plates, the murmur of wheat field money. They each held on somehow to that flimsy thread. Her chatter toward the genial ear proved honey enough for 50 years of unvoiced love. We only ever heard them grouse instead.
Hi. I was deeply saddened to learn that Ted died on February 16th. But there was a quickening moment as well, because that happens to be my birthday. And I was thinking that maybe a sort of small baton was being handed on. But I wish he had found someone a little younger. I'll be reading Lonesome Summer Beauties, which was my top pick for a youth in the youth category. Lonesome Summer Beauties. I pray you never make my smile the sun, or wish my eyes the beauty of the sea. For every piece of beauty that's been won is undeserved of most, and mostly me. Conceit has blinded all the best to lies as they compare themselves to summer days. Our ears are built for songs and wistful sighs that suffocate us in a dreamy haze. They say their words of praise come from within, to pledge my heart some respite after death. But flowery words belie my truest skin, and nature's winds drowned out my deepest breath. So here I'll sit and pray for cleaner slates than those our lovers gift us as our fates. That was by Laurie M. Van Dorn from Prescott Valley, Arizona. Ernest Hilberg from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was one of my 4 laureates' choices poems. This one is called Proposed Units, Phase 4, High Ashes. We've broken up the ground. Let's start to build. We slept entombed in soil for centuries. We're acid turning sunlight into fog. We're light that can't get through. We're always filled with what we gain but start to lose. The freeze will come to thaw. We drain the ancient bog and plant the homes. We steer the rain. We firm the dikes. We caulk the pipes. We never mind the sewage in the storm. We see the snow that never sticks. We watch the worms that squirm from loam. We never map the halls we mind. It's getting late. It's better not to know. It's silver everywhere. It's styrofoam. They're built to fall apart, like us. They're home.
I'm Ken McCullough, for those of you who don't know me. I'm going to read a couple of poems that are laureate choices. The first is titled The Sonnet of a Function. It's by Xin Zhang from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Don't you wish all things were like a function, a predictable and stable fable, never hurting and never mistaken? If life was a nice symmetric table, even a daring inverse reversal, a square root function would even be fine. Or angles, theorems, chords, and transversals. Sadly, never knowing when not to climb, when to stop, breathe, finally take a rest. A mess of memories and anecdotes. Forget the worst and remember the best. Slowly approaching the dull asymptote, our life should not be repetitive math with its conditionals and apathy. And again, that's by Xin Zhang, Chapel Hill. The next poem is titled Leica, November 3rd, 1957. And I should say something by way of background. I'm looking around. I think most of you remember this, but some of you watching in may not be old enough to remember it. Leica was a 13-pound stray that was part husky, part terrier, and the first animal to orbit the Earth aboard the Russian spacecraft Sputnik 2, launched on the 3rd of November, 1957. Leica's survival was never expected. She died of overheating hours into the flight on the craft's fourth orbit. Since Russia and the US were in a fierce race to conquer space at this time, the actual circumstances of Leica's demise were kept from the public for a significant period. This is by Mary Jane Osborne, Davis, California. Leica, November 3rd, 1957. Little mongrel in your casket moon, spinning for a while around the earth, we humans will attempt to follow soon the trail that was our destiny from birth. If you had known the meaning of your arc, would you, never a dog to hesitate, have bravely gone into this greatest dark that mankind ever dared to penetrate? In those last suffering hours before you died, if you had known their meaning, little friend, would that have been your time of greatest pride or sadness that your masters chose to send small you on that vast mission of their race, to die far and alone in that small space. I'd like to say one thing about the writer. I did some snooping on the internet, and I discovered that Mary Jane Osborne is an accomplished scholar, translator, and fiction writer, and professor emerita at UC Davis. In the email she sent to Heidi expressing her regrets at not being able to attend today's event, she mentioned one reason being that she'd have a hard time finding a dog sitter for her two collies. She mentioned also that she is 90 years old. Maybe she's just getting around to trying her hand at sonnets. We hope for more to come.
So I'm Leslie Scholz, and I've been reflecting all year that it's this sonnet contest that brought me to Winona, and I can't actually imagine my life without knowing the people here and the town now. But without this contest, I don't know if I would have ever been here. So I'm very grateful to be here today, and I want to read a laureate's choice sonnet that delights me for many reasons, two of which it introduced me to a new to me and fascinating botanical term with all the swirlings of history and mythology around it. And even more, it definitely employs all the sonnet conventions in the service of creating a very memorable voice, a dramatic monologue that I think, Robert Browning would have enjoyed. So here is Hyoscyamus niger by Julie Howard Hobson of Astoria, Oregon. Come in, sit down, and have a cup of tea. Well, tisane, really, it's not tea leaves. It's herbal, organic, GMO-free. I grew the plants myself. Do you believe what the neighbors are saying about all the failed crops and the autumn blight? Did you hear if they know who's behind it? I recall your name came up in the gossip, my dear, as someone who repeated some rumors all over the county. Oh, drink up. There's more in the pot. I was a late bloomer. I don't like to give myself airs, but I finally got the hang of brewing specialty blends. Now, how are you doing?
All right, I'm going to read one of the top 4 sonnets this year. It's by Catherine Howard McCann. I think I'm saying that right. Ithaca, New York. And the title is Via Caio Cestio. And that refers, I believe, to the road running past the cemetery where John Keats is buried in Rome. And there is a little line before we begin called Here Lies One Whose Name is Written in Water, February 24th, 1821. That line is written on Keats's tombstone. Beside the cemetery path, the cat waits, gazing from her sturdy perch of stone for people, mourners, tourists, poets that come walking grouped together or alone. She's sure here in this place of steady green that she will be protected, warmed, and fed, where pale gray monuments kept safe and clean provide world's recognition of the dead. Does she take comfort in a soft, strong voice reciting sonnets penned by the young man who's buried here, his dear friend's loving choice, where beauty thrives as only beauty can? She seems to purr, to listen with her face turned upward in this simple, sacred space.
The first thing that I'll say is that I think that these so-called substitute readers have done a remarkable job doing justice to these great poems that I've been listening to for the past, 20 minutes or so. And I'm the first one who's reading in the Zoom section, and you can just think of me as a test pattern and take it from there. But at any rate, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a very musical household. My mother was a wonderful pianist, and the records that would play of the 19th century top big shots were always part of our house, the air in our house. And I would go to bed at night as a child thinking, what if I were able to write something like what they write? I never was, but sonnets help. This is called The Music of the Spheres. Frédéric Chopin, Fanny Mendelssohn, Claude Debussy. When you woke up at night, synapses snapping wildly, did you write your nocturnes then? And was the woozy moon spreading its silver fingers over yours, convincing you to give in to your will, your high romantic fantasies, until the swollen stars were winking like voyeurs? How intimate were you with the coiled wires underneath your piano's lid, as note by note you wove a lovely antidote for our enormous orbiting desires? Did you suspect how much it would be worth to bring one moment's peace to this old earth? I'll close quickly by thanking all of the people who put this wonderful event together.
Hello, my name is Caroline Chen, and I am from Irvine, California. My sonnet is called To Speak Unique. From youth, we have been urged to stay unique. For boxed-in meetings, we must always be. The ones outside the box must always speak on obscure points, the price of novelty. Discussing common issues we all face, only to hear the boos, the jeers, the sneers of people told too often to debase conventional beliefs, stigmatic fears, which by recurring seem mere platitude. But who will learn and who will take the cue? Writing past troubles might be overdue. If only innovation is pursued, writing past troubles might be overdue. Exhausting fresh objectives after all, to cycle back to old points we recall. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for putting on truly an amazing event. I think poetry is one of the most important vehicles we have now for expressing our, deepest thoughts without hopefully offending people, because poetry in itself is such a gentle music, no matter how fierce the message may be. My poem is a Shakespearean sonnet, and it's about, of course, the beautiful Ophelia. And in this version of it, she is telling off her pompous father in a way that is hopefully the music that Shakespeare probably would never have written, in which Ophelia metaphysically slays her father. I spend each hour wishing I were dead. I'd thought you so devoted to my care. You made a forfeit of my marriage bed and turned my trust in you into a snare. Crossed lovers' grief makes ill even the well. The crime of seeking happiness severe. I sought to aid a wronged prince face his hell by giving comfort banked on naive cheer. I can't feign sorrow knowing what's to come. Your contumely destroyed my purest bliss. I have no need for drugs to leave me numb, no lectures falsely based on joys I'll miss. Future imperfect, that's the tense you speak. Sad proof of one not strong, but deathly weak. Thank you again for allowing me to do this. It's an absolute thrill and a huge honor to be among so many talented people with their beautiful, beautiful words. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Frances Dreas, and I am here in West Los Angeles, which is far more beautiful than you might think. This sonnet is called Close Reading, and like many poems, was written to impress someone. Close reading. Every body has a language unique. A lover is a linguist, so I seek one who feels my text deeply and loves to read. There's a couplet in the curve of my hips, untranslated poems just inside my lips. I favor one who savors words, not speed. Translation is a rather tricky art, from sense and sensibility to word. I say a poem must be tasted, touched, heard, inhaled, and tongued to comprehend each part. Feel with your body in order to see. Your hands the compass when exploring me. Then say where you traveled. You'll represent what I didn't quite write, but what I meant. Thanks very much for putting this together and for allowing me to be a part of it.
Hello, my name is Tessa Lee, and I am joined by some birds and a squirrel that seems to think it's a bird. I wrote this sonnet shortly after reading Much Ado About Nothing, so without much further ado, the prince recalls his days as matchmaker. I watched this couple circle round the room, bickered, bantered, flirted, argued thus, in love, as any stranger might assume, but mention love, and heavens, oh, the fuss! The pride provoked them into raising walls, divided them as if to love meant war. But though their musket mouths fired chest-bound blows, the thrill of dodging drove them back for more. A gentle push was all that they required. Just look what happened on the even fields. Dear Beatrice, he sings into the wind. Fair Benedict, she giggles to her friends. The art of love's a skill that all must hone, especially for a man who is alone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Beth Ruhl Larson. I live in Somerset, Massachusetts, halfway between Boston and Cape Cod. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to share a poem about a much-loved uncle. Shark Bites for T. Pat, 1920 to 2015. He lost his brakes descending Whetstone Hill and laughed. At 94, a lark. We held our tongues, arranged repairs, relieved, until he clambered up a 10-foot ladder, compelled to clear his gutters of their twigs and leaves. We balked, then threatened, and still he did not bend. He was a man who did, scrunched up his sleeves and trimmed his hedge to a 3 by 1 foot end. He wrapped the pipes in rags to stop a leak. He drilled the trunks of discount Christmas trees and jammed in boughs, his penny-wise technique. His shorts exposed the scars above his knees and prompted tales of shark bites far from shore. He never once talked about the war. Thank you.
In reading all these sonnets, I more than once would fall back on the old conflict between Wordsworth and Keats. Wordsworth, the sublime egotistical, and Keats, the one who said that we really should concern ourselves with a kind of otherness that is not ourselves. And I found myself very much endeared to this poem that I chose to be my top pick by Barbara Lutz of Kansas City, Missouri, called Till Death Do Us Part. Illusion carried on for 30 years. I called it love. It was a kind of grace that gave me freedom, bottled up my fears, and let me find assurance in his face. How was it from the outside looking in? This marriage kept alive by sheer romance. We looked so happy, and we might have been unequal partners in a private dance. His ashes scattered now, his spirit gone. I don't know where, but never haunting me. I have the common sense to carry on, all by myself, with clearer eyes to see our love was but a spell, a sleight of hand to marvel at. No need to understand.
Wow, I'm looking straight at it. Let's see. Does that work? Closer. All right. My name's Sharon Hilber. I live in Minneapolis. I want to just add my appreciation to everyone who worked to make the Great River Shakespeare Festival and this terrific contest and event happen. It's a lot, and it's such good work. My poem honors a valiant man who arrived in the United States in 1979, a refugee and a veteran of the American War in Southeast Asia. It was during his many hours long funeral service conducted in his native language, Hmong, that I wrote this sonnet, partly to keep myself present in that that extended moment. And I'll start with the note at the end of the poem for the word pandao. Pandao is a cloth elaborately embroidered and appliqued in the Hmong tradition, and in this case, a quilt that was buried with the deceased. Funeral song for KT Yang, Ho Tao Yang, Ko Tim Yang. The mourners speak. Excuse me. The mourners speak. The ones he left behind, they grieve and weep. They cry and talk at once, and their heartfelt expression serves to bind bereaved as one, with memories, needs, and wants piled up together in a mound of loss. His absence forms a presence in itself. Under the pandao, roses, silver cross, and in the air around us, in the wealth brought forth to honor his well-finished run. So songs and speeches, prayers and tears remind the living to pause here, join hands, and find a way to live and love as he has done. Now sing ancestral songs and sound the drum that leads back to the place from which we come. Thank you.
This is a youth sonnet, and I really enjoy many things about it, the seasonal imagery, but I'm especially impressed with the way it seems very straightforward until you look at the title again, and then you're wondering, is this a description of visits from a real person, or perhaps from happiness, or both? You decide. It's called A Visit from Felicity by Thaddeus Smilewski of Brooklyn, New York. You came to me when winter's sharpened claws still wrapped around my raw and tender throat. Your unexpected visit gave me pause. I stared as you removed your frosted coat. You came to me as tulips stretched for air, They burst and budded from the flower bed. You tended to them softly and with care, but left as soon as summer reared its head. You came to me beneath the August sky, the golden sands adorned with stones and shells. You danced with me until I felt alive, then disappeared below the ocean swells. And now that autumn's knocking at the door, I hope that you will visit me once more.
I'm going to say this one might be a love sonnet too, kind of. This is by Laura Plummer from Gloucester, Massachusetts, and is entitled Sonnet for an Old Cat. Another year, and still you warm my lap. Can't believe my kitten's now 16. I hear you softly snoring while you nap and think of all the places we have been. We've both grown old, my handsome little boy. I see the white appearing in your fur. I offer you your favorite crinkle toy, but you prefer to cuddle while you purr. I know it won't be long until we part. Each day we spend together is a gift. The quiet beating of your tiny heart reminds me that we're just two souls adrift. One day, you'll lay your head upon my chest, I'll kiss your ears, and God will do the rest.
This poem is a laureate's choice. It's called Black Ice. And for those of you who don't live in the upper Midwest, that is a very particular form of winter peril that this poem does a good job explaining, actually, and then makes a nice turn into metaphor. It's by David Southward of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Black ice. It forms in shadows, coldness no one sees, creeps into wintry rain or spring's first thaws to lay its trap. It toys with physics laws, causing surface moisture to refreeze so fast a runner slips and cracks both knees, while fate erupts in giggles of applause. Reminded of life's undetected flaws, the victim of its ambiguities proceeds with caution. Spiritually bruised, the fool no longer trusts his own two eyes to find those spots where evil is confused with good, where truth is lacquered with where truth is lacquered slick with lies. Instead, he shuffles, trying to get used to ground that gives way to a dark surprise. Can't believe I bobbled that line. It's my favorite line of the whole contest. Truth is lacquered slick with lies. This is another laureate's choice by Midge Goldberg of Chester, New Hampshire. I think you'll find this a familiar topic. Forgetting a name, I search through old emails. Looking through my inbox, I scroll back years. This email list is like a time machine. And there they are, the dead. Each one appears casually alive inside my screen. First one, then more, they start to multiply. The farther back I go, the more I see. There'll be less need to scroll as time goes by. The dead will pop right up, reminding me. I think back to my mother's phone book, red, spiral, pages emptied by gray erasures. The paper turning crinkly with the dead. Their presence shrinking year by year like glaciers. No longer are the dead gone once they die, always at hand, unable to reply.
This is also a laureate's choice. It's titled Demeter's Dirge. It's written by Carissa Cohn. And I take you back to Greek Mythology 101. Demeter is the Olympian goddess presiding over the fertility of the earth. Impregnated by her brother Zeus, Demeter became the mother of Persephone. Hades, king of the underworld, and Persephone's uncle, wished to make Persephone his wife. He abducted her, took her to the underworld. Demeter searched everywhere to find Persephone until she was informed that Hades had taken her to the underworld. Meanwhile, Demeter had ignored her duties as goddess of agriculture, plunging the earth into a deadly famine. Zeus ordered Hades to return Persephone to her mother to quell this disaster. There was a catch, however. Because Persephone had partaken of food from the underworld, she could not stay with Demeter. She could not stay with Demeter year-round, but had to divide her time between her mother and her husband. Thus, to this day, we have 2 seasons of growth, while Persephone is with us, and with Demeter, and 2 of barrenness when she is with Hades. Demeter's dirge. I chasten you, soil. Your fecundity conjures nubile blossoms, diversion. Death pounces, abducts my dear Persephone, plummets her to a realm absent of breath. In accordance, I pluck leaves one by one off trees whose tender roots you cradle, daub gloom ever sooner over sallow sun, choke frigid wind as it echoes my sobs. Disperse her name across each barren field, startle critters into hibernation. You are sterile, neither of us will yield by choice. I prolong earth's desolation. My seedling is gone until she comes home. This is your lot. I cannot mourn alone.
This sonnet is a regional winner. It's by Jim Togeas of Morris, Minnesota. It's one I really love because it seems both eternal and very timely. Many of us have spent a little more time this year with eclipses and northern lights, looking up at the sky and being dazzled by the science, the art, what's happening up there. It's inspiring. And the sounds in this sonnet are fantastic. It's called Aurora. When the sun storms and rages, and smithies fierce in solar forges twist magnetic fields in strands of braided, barbed-wired folds that falling lacerate the solar face. And when chaotic forces open wounds and plasma spouts and molten geysers flex their arcs and flares, and the turning vortex flings to earth electromagnetic winds, then the child asks, who set the sky on fire? Not fire, child, no, a canvas, the sun's Cezanne, colors against the dreariness of man, a spectrum to delight. On a Greek lyre of elements, a bard strums an Orphic air that slowly sways beyond the human ear.
Morning or good afternoon for you, I think. I'm so grateful for Mr. Holland for creating this legacy of poetry. What a rare and special thing. I also want to thank Joanna, who, at least from the Zoom side of things, has been making this all run very smoothly, which is not always the case. I'm so grateful. This poem is called Snapshot. My father gave my baby photos back, just handed me this unsealed envelope that held a rather random seeming stack of prints, like baby E in tub with soap, or baby E with Tupperware on head, an aunt I don't remember rocking me, a yellow Easter dress, a trundle bed, first Christmas after partial custody. I thought that you might want these, then the thrust, a dozen early photos of my face, unsmiling for the most part, or nonplussed, not sullen, only sorely out of place. His parting shot, I found that he'd supplied all duplicates and negatives inside. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amy Wong and I'm from New York City. I wrote this poem because I was inspired by the countless experiences a person can encounter in a short span of time in the vibrant city of Manhattan. Even something as simple as walking to the bus stop, like my poem describes, can hold its own beauty. Here's my poem. Journey to a Manhattan bus stop. Graffiti covers up the ugly grime. The weather is bipolar, wind and sun. With people bustling, running out of time, it feels we're in fast forward, on the run. While on the way, I try to comprehend why groups of pigeons fight for bread, and how the languages of many nations blend. What's up, United? Buenos dias, ciao. I'm blocking out the noise of Lincoln Square, while buildings hulk above the traffic jam. A taxi desperate for another fare pulls up to me and yells out, "Where to, ma'am?" I say to him, "I'm sorry, not today. My bus arrives to carry me away." Thank you. And thank you so much to everyone. Wait, what? And thank you so much to everyone who made this happen.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Javits. My poem is inspired by something I learned at some point, and I don't remember when, but it's always fascinated me. Uh, I'm from New York, and the poem is about uh, the sword. Uh, According to Raphael Herman, University of Göttingen archaeologist, swords are the first objects invented purely to kill someone. And as far as I know, they may still be the only objects invented purely to kill someone, except for like World War One chemical weapons, because guns are used for hunting and bows and arrows and everything are used for hunting. So I found it fascinating. Sonnet is the invention of the sword. "What is it?" said the hunter to the smith. "This sword can't prep a fire or kill a deer. It's much too long to trim down branches with, and far too short to hunt with like a spear." Farmer had objections too. "I hate to say this, but you couldn't cut down grain or fell a row of trees with this. Its weight's too balanced. All attempts would be in vain." The weaver and the sailor frowned as well. "It's just too big for cutting thread or rope." And so the bronze smith thought he'd never sell his masterpiece and cried and gave up hope. The murderer, though, ended this dismay. He used it on the smith in lieu of pay.
My name is Stephen Monty, and I guess I'm the third in the trio of New Yorkers in the reading here, which is special. I want to, as several people have said already, just thank everyone for this wonderful event and listening to all these poems. So my poem begins with a epigraph, all too famous, from Marianne Moore. I too dislike it. I thought about adding a second one from a friend of mine who also said that there aren't a lot of people who like poetry, but those that do like it a lot, to counter the pessimism. But this poem is not a dramatic monologue. It really is from my experience. And I really did hate poetry for a long time, and now I love it. First encounters with poetry. Marianne Moore confided there was more than all this fuss. Who am I to disagree? For a long time, I hated poetry. Too indirect and distant, I was sure. Yet even then, it harbored an allure, if not what might be called a mystery. Interpretations I could only see if I dismissed what it was fashioned for, and made it my own. Later, I would try to see things from the poet's point of view. My pleasure mounted, but I wouldn't say poetry was something for which I'd sigh or hope to read. Let me give it this due. Some lines lingered. Some won't go away. Thank you.
Greetings from Canada. My name is Manfred Dietrich. I have written a series of poems about the Franklin expedition in quest of the Northwest Passage. This particular poem sees Franklin icebound at the Northeast Passage. Broken and aged since Van Diemen's Land, John Franklin was no gentleman at sea. His ship was called the Terror, as was he. He struggled with the whiteness of this land. He had no shield against the icy gales. Once off the ship in open space ashore, the natives disappointed him. He swore that he was unafraid of carving trails. He dealt alike with men and Malamute, found voyageurs to haul his laden sled. His single vision drove him beyond dread. He failed to understand he was a brute. To die would have been easy, but no cure. The harder part was having to endure. Thank you, and please keep up the good work of this project.
Hello, my name is Michael Hardy. I'm speaking to you from Prairie Village, Kansas, which is neither on the prairie nor a village, but a suburb of Kansas City. I want to add my thanks to all the people who are keeping this excellent contest going, and say what an honor and a privilege it is to be included with so much excellent work. It turns out my poem is a pretty good fit with being the last one. It's called Can't Bring Myself to Fix It. For years now, I have watched this slow decay beneath my hand as time and sweat and wear erode the leather arm of my old chair. Why do I leave it so? If every day our human parts, knees, kidneys, hips, make way for their replacements when in disrepair, as readily almost as cutting hair, disintegrating cowhide need not stay. Yet which of all the hand's expressions last? All touches, loving, lusting, soothing fear, all pledges sworn, each curse or blessing cast, all juggles, gestures, grips, will disappear and leave what? Written words. And my time past, this ragged patch that says, my hand was here. Thank you.
And with that, we've reached the end of our presentation. Let's give another big round of applause for all the folks that presented here today, our readers, our poets laureate, our artistic director of the Shakespeare Festival. Big round of applause for all of them. One of the things I find most profound every year are the youth entries. And in a time when the rhetoric is that youth are unengaged and they don't care and they're killing this and they're destroying that, it's a great reminder for all of us that that's not true. And we need to provide accessible opportunities and invitations for young people to participate in things like this, because these are our future artists. These are our future poets laureate. These are the future of the literal country. So a profound thanks to everybody for gathering with us today. It was an exciting day. We are headed to the Blue Heron, right, Heidi? So after this, so if anyone wants to join anybody for some lunch and some nice conversation, please feel free to head over there. but we'll close this out. Thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. I will say really quickly, there is a company conversation for the Shakespeare Festival tomorrow at Blooming Grounds at 11. So if you're interested in hearing from the Shakespeare Company, and if you happen to be going to have tickets to Hamlet tonight, you're lucky because it's sold out. But there is a little ice cream social afterwards. But I've been told if you don't have tickets and you show up, they're going to do their best to get you in. So feel free to take part in any of the great activities going on in Winona this weekend. Thank you, folks, and have a beautiful, beautiful weekend.